Hello all, and welcome to the pre-recorded part of this session. We would like to start this section with a brief introduction to the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. For those of you who are not familiar with what the SDGs even are, this is the point where we will hopefully enlighten you. The Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs as more commonly referred to, were defined by the UN as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and improve the lives and prospects of everyone, everywhere. The 17 goals were adopted by all 193 members of the UN in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which set out a 15-year plan to achieve these goals. These goals start out to promote zero poverty and zero hunger, but also highlighting the lack of gender equality. They then shift to tackling the economic and infrastructural issues and advocate to better protection of life below water and on land. But the most important goal, and surprisingly also the last goal, is about further pursuing partnerships working towards the goals of sustainable development. These goals are non-binding and are broken down into targets which amount to 169 targets. These are to be used as a reference or guideline on what actions can be taken. Besides that, these goals are interdisciplinary and interdependent. The interdisciplinarity stems from the variety of areas the goals cover, ranging from cultural goals to protection of wildlife and environment goals, economic and innovation, as well as social goals. On the other hand, the interdependent aspect comes from the fact that all goals are interlinked. By implementing sustainable actions throughout organizations, as well as our individual lifestyles, many goals can be achieved at once. Some may be achieved faster than others, though all progress is valuable and ultimately results in the desired outcome being a sustainable world. Now, the main question you must all be thinking is, how and why do the Sustainable Development Goals apply to open-air museums? This connection will be the highlight of the next few slides. To round off this section, we would like to direct anyone seeking more information or resources relating to the SDGs and the role that we have to play in it to follow the link below, exarc.net/sustainable development goals. On this page, you'll find both articles and further resources to read on the SDGs, as well as connections to additional sources. In this section, we will discuss a development by Jasper Visser on how to tackle the SDGs for museums, followed by our own understanding and approach to the SDGs for museums. Jasper Visser is an international consultant and advisor for cultural and civic organization and has prior experience on implementing development goals in organizations by putting theory into practice. In a previous webinar, Visser proposed 3 strategies within which museums can frame their engagement in the SDGs: leading the way, supporting others, or changing internally. What Visser's guideline provided us with is a highlight of 3 main goals which best apply to museums, those being goal number 4, quality education, containing a target which refers cultural centers to promote education on sustainability and its values. Goal 10, reduced inequalities, in which a target is to include all people from any background and ensure diversity is adequately represented. And finally, goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, in which creating accessibility to information is a priority. Visser's breakdown inspired us to take a deeper look at how we can inspire more change in a more approachable way. As an organization striving to implement the SDGs to the core of our mission, we found the breakdown by Visser far too complex due to its focus on the targets. Although the targets may provide a guide on what specific points to tackle, it can create an overwhelming and confusing outlook towards the SDGs. Thus, we believe in adopting a form of common sense towards the Sustainable Development Goals as a way of making tackling the goals more approachable. The UN SDGs can come across very top-down and complex. Thus, gauging how our individual contribution matters is very difficult, but as an organization, we can work from a bottom-up perspective. This may come about through a trial and error mechanism, as well as the valuable input from all staff and contributors. As museums, it may be necessary to develop new skills and techniques to best implement the SDGs into our institutions. Yet experimenting with new approaches to create these impacts will help the field evolve, whilst promoting an exchange of ideas within the field. Likewise, it may be helpful to approach the SDGs from an inside-outside model. Of course, the main impact the SDGs stress are for the outside world, but it can be argued that in order to achieve lasting external changes, it may be best to adopt internal changes that drive external progress, an idea which was mentioned by Douglas Warts earlier today. At the local level, the inside-outside model is designed to help museums find ways to best engage the public with sustainability issues, with an ultimate goal of generating 3 points: personal reflections, a dialogue that builds social cohesion and common understanding, and personal and co-creative actions. What this may look like is that by reflecting on our actions, we may identify areas in which we can effect small changes in order to create larger impacts, such as being more transparent with one's research or data, or simply making the swap to a reusable water bottle. Second, pursuing a dialogue on sustainability will engage our immediate environment and peers to reflect on their own position, creating awareness of their contribution and responsibility in furthering the sustainable development. Finally, this should drive individuals and organizations alike to act in the name of sustainability and respond to the issue by making lasting changes. Finally, as a group, we believe that the best approach to effecting change is to reevaluate the core missions of museums or organizations and strive to incorporate SDG goals into the mission in order to push for progress. Not only does this give the mission meaning, but it also creates a sense of something to work towards within the organization. An important takeaway for all is that the SDGs are open to interpretation. The goals can be approached in any way an organization sees fit, as long as the main goals, 1 to 17, lie at the forefront of the progress. In the next slide, I'll discuss some examples of members from the museum community and how they interpret working towards a sustainable world. So now, let's see all of this theory in practice. Below, we have highlighted 3 examples of how you or your organization can work on the SDGs based on real-life situations within the museum community. The most important point to note is that progress will look different for all. For example, sustainable actions that might work in Brazil may have 0 effect in Germany. Similarly, approaches that work for one organization, for example, introducing a recycling system, may make no changes for another, as they may already have such a system in place, for example, or simply do not produce recyclable waste. We all have different starting points and different resources available to us, so we must keep in mind that all action is commendable. Although, as a whole, the museum community is strongly lacking in the sustainability department, so let this here be our call to action. Working towards a sustainable world is not only about reducing emissions, as you will see below. Reducing emissions are a large part of the goals. However, there are 17 goals, and reducing emissions does not reach the targets of all. Therefore, these examples should inspire you to other actions you can take. The first example is coming from Butzer Ancient Farms in the UK. The way they act sustainably is by supporting local businesses by selling their local produce. This highlights the point of responsible consumption and production, as well as decent work and economic growth. A simple action that supports sustainability in many ways. Example number 2 comes from AFM Erlinghausen in Germany. They promote sustainability by conducting workshops on finding and using seasonal herbs connected to our archaeological past, which reflects again responsible consumption and production, but also creates accessibility to knowledge and protects traditional practices. Finally, Hyogo Museum in Japan. They grow an ancient and local variety of rice in the traditional way. In doing so, they are preserving the local cultural heritage and promoting how ancient techniques can still be updated and applied today. All these examples show simple steps that can be taken in order to better implement sustainable practices into museum functions. Hopefully, these examples will help you reflect on the first question of the session. How is your organization contributing to a sustainable world? And hopefully, it will help you see more answers to the question than you did at the beginning. If not, we hope it will become a source of inspiration for actions that can be adopted at your organization or others in order to further the progress towards sustainability. Next up, we will discuss a creation by EXARC called the 10 Simple Actions. The 10 Simple Actions are an approach to the SDGs developed by EXARC to guide archaeologists and ease the adoption of sustainable practices at excavation sites. These actions have the goal of making the SDGs more approachable in their nature and facilitating approaches in the name of sustainability. As a list, the 10 Simple Actions cover almost all SDGs and range from resource consumption to collaboration efforts. Some of the ideas below are simple to achieve. Some of them require some preparation. So pick what suits you in your organization and put it into practice. The first point talks about using sustainable solutions at your site. By making an effort to use eco-friendly materials and keeping in mind the steps reduce, reuse, recycle, we reduce our physical impact on the environment around us. Second, use as much as possible local as well as human resources. In doing so, we support local economies and businesses and reduce our impact on the environment. This is an example reflected in the Butzer ancient farms. Next up, highlighting the connection between human and nature. By doing so, we highlight the value of coexistence and raise awareness on the topic. Next, you may potentially showcase the impact of climate change on the planet from an archaeological perspective, further raising awareness of the issue and hopefully inspiring people to take action. Number 5 is about creating a guide that displays how ancient solutions can be updated to be of use today, something similar to the Hyogo Museum example. This preserves the traditional techniques and inspires us to adapt them in an innovative way and hopefully a more lasting way. Number 6, working with the biodiversity of our site. By doing so, we may showcase the natural state of the site and reinstate it to its prior glory to give the excavation some archaeological and historical context. Next, number 7 is about promoting partnerships between museums and groups like Fridays for Future, for example. This allows us to reach a different audience and create awareness in different advocacy channels. Number 8 refers to making sustainable collaborations. Similar to point 7, it's about collaborating with organizations that align with our mission and values and promote work on sustainable development goals. By doing so, you may create connections that will support the change towards a sustainable future and potentially enlighten you on how to approach new issues you come across. Number 9, share your work. This facilitates and encourages transparency for all, and it allows people from all over the world to appreciate and engage with your contribution to the field. The final point is number 10. Think further than just collecting. It's about creating strategies for sustainable preservation. So next, I will talk about how the 10 simple actions link more directly to the UN SDGs from point 1 to 17, which points actually are most highlighted through the 10 simple actions. Starting off, we will talk about goal number 4, quality education. By promoting the local history and techniques of our excavation, we are providing people with local knowledge and helping them better connect with their environment. Goal 9, industry innovation and infrastructure. In order to create strategies for sustainable preservation, we must adapt the current ones and think of innovative ways to do so. Goal number 10, reduced inequalities. By ensuring diversity in our staff, we're promoting representation within our field. Next up, goal 11 and 12 link strongly to goal number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. Goal 11 and 12 go hand in hand as promoting local businesses and the economy support a sustainable community as well as responsible consumption and production. Goal 13, climate actions. By showcasing the impact of climate change on the planet and our biodiversity, we may highlight the causes of this change and how the human impact has caused or accelerated this. Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, is about accessibility. It's about ensuring that available data is on the online databases and journals. And finally, Goal 17, Partnerships for the Goals. This is reflected in Action 7 and 8, creating connections with different groups. The 10 simple actions are an example of how all of this may look in practice, hopefully making the possibility of working on the Sustainable Development Goals within your organization seem less daunting and more of a welcome challenge. The presentation is now coming towards an end. We hope that you can use this information as a guideline for future action or inspiration to continue the discussion. We would like to bring again point 7 and 8 of the 10 simple actions as a crucial one. By instigating collaboration and facilitating these, we can support one another in the transition towards a sustainable future and help each other along the way. Not only do we help those within our community, but we can find opportunities to connect with other advocacy groups and promote joint efforts to tackle these issues together. We have a final exercise for you. We invite all of you to come up with the 10 simple actions specific to your own field and organization, which may inspire internal change in order to promote sustainability within and hopefully create lasting external impacts. Thank you all for being present, for listening, and participating. To round everything off, we will enter a short Q&A period, which will last until the end of this session. Please send in any questions in the chat, and we will try our best to provide you with the most appropriate answer. Thank you once again. Goodbye.